So Darin, there's a little bit of my introduction and how I got to know you.
You make it sound like a lot better story than maybe it is. It's I'm just a guy who writes deodorant commercials on TV. So
I'm glad somebody's been paying attention in church, right? It is interesting how we connected. And talking about the body of Christ and the larger Baptist body, that's how we got to know Darin, through Tom Cantwell. And this idea of body is so very important. So as we began, I just thought I'd get Darin to give you the 1 minute introduction of his life and the whirlwind, where you grew up and how you got to where you are.
Grew up in suburban Hickory, small town, youngest of Senator Darin Gantt's 3 boys, all Eagle Scouts. Mom's very proud of that. And moved off to the city to work for the newspaper like John Boyd Walton, left the family business. My family's in the nursery business back in Hickory, and done well in that over the years, but that was too much work. So I decided I'd go work for newspapers and do that kind of stuff. And did that for a while, had a couple kids, got divorced, came to Park Road, found these people, found a place to fit in. Got married again this past summer, had a lovely couple of pastors oversee that ceremony, which was nice, and here we are.
Wonderful. Tell us how much church was a part of your upbringing.
Well, I mean, it was just context. It was, I was thinking the other week when Reed Heaton gets up in this cold pool of water on Christmas Eve, I just thought, man, that was a deliberate and conscious step he took. In the church I grew up in, we baptized babies, you know, and we all wore the same baptismal gown, everybody in the same family. Yes, me and my daughter wore the same dress once upon a time, even though it was about 30 years apart. But it was a more passive thing. It was just your context. It's where you grew up. You went to church on Sunday, youth group Sunday nights, you went scouts on Tuesday, you know, and do all the things of the church. You know, first Saturday in November, the church comes together, has a big pot pie supper where the whole church comes together, everybody does their individual thing, and we feed the community, and it's our big money-raising thing. It was just part of the calendar. It was what you were used to every day.
It's kind of interesting, Darin talks about church as sort of passive context. He's clearly moved from passive context to active seeking, I think. We're going to get to that in just a minute, but tell us what drew you to professional sports, and is that a passion for you or just a job?
It has been both over the years, to be perfectly honest with you. I had a story when I was a young boy, went to a baseball game down in Atlanta, and to tell the clean version of the story, I asked a ball player a question that elicited a funny response that, you know, and I figured out I could go to ballparks and talk to ball players, and every now and then one of them will say a funny thing, and maybe I could do this more often. And I've been around, seen some interesting stuff, and it's been a blessing to be able to do a lot of that stuff. I mean, there are days, just like every other job, it's kind of a job, but, you know, there are worse things to do in exchange for money.
I'd asked you this question once before, I think on a Wednesday night. I remember hearing you say the thing that drew you, part of what drew you to it was the stories,
right.
Not just the football,
right.
Not just the achievement, but the individual stories, and that really connects you to what you're doing.
Yeah,
here.
absolutely. And the thing about ball teams they're like church congregations. I mean, there's people from every corner of the globe, race, backgrounds, everything you'd want, and finding out about each of those guys and their own thing. We hear an awful lot about star quarterbacks and this, that, and the other, but, you know, every team's got guys, third stringers, et cetera, who's got their own background. There was a young guy who played for the Panthers this year named Sean Chandler, who grew up poor in New Jersey in a homeless shelter. And I enjoyed talking to Sean about his journey and making it out of, you know, his hometown in New Jersey, which is one of the poorest places in America, to be able to make it to the NFL. And to be able to share that story is one thing I can do, I guess.
Yeah. Darin, I take it like lots of folks, you had been somewhat out of church for some years when you ran into Tom Cantwell and asked him for a recommendation. I wonder if you'd tell us a little bit about that. What was it that drew you to ask about finding a church?
Well, I think, and part of it was, without getting too deep into it, when you are divorced, there's an isolation, and you withdraw from the context you had at that point. And being without that kind of family context and being without the kind of avenue to serve that I was used to growing up was tough, and it is something I wanted to get back to. I wanted my kids to be able to see it. I wanted them to be able to be a part of youth group and that kind of stuff that I had access to when I was a kid. So yeah, I did seek it out, and you know, it was an extremely accidental meeting that brought us here together, but Tom Cantwell did a good thing getting me here.
I like to think maybe it was a providential meeting, not an accidental one. So, nobody's been more active in our missions program in recent years. I really appreciate this idea of moving from passive context to active seeking, and you clearly have actively sought ways to be involved. And I wonder, what are the similarities and what are the differences in the way you find your passion here and in what you do in your career?
That's a tough one, and you mentioned this the other day, and I've sort of struggled with it, and I think back to one of the things I've always enjoyed. I like covering ball games and being part of newspapers, but I love being in newsrooms. And one of the neat things about my job now is I'm around a bigger group of young people, designers, photographers, videographers, that kind of thing. And it reminds me of the old great newsrooms I've been a part of, where everybody does their own individual thing and does it in their own way, and you come together. And I get an energy from being around the people I work with. You know, and they do things I can't do. And you hope that it becomes part of a greater good. But I enjoy the idea of being around people for a common effort.
I hear a lot there, Darin, about the person-to-person contact. Yeah. And rather than doing a job, is being involved in people's lives, hearing their stories, being a part of that. Last week's interview that we didn't get to do was supposed to be about individual gifts, and today we were moving toward thinking about being part of a larger community and work within the body of Christ. So talk with us for just a moment about individual gifts versus work within the community. How are an individual and that person's participation within the larger community related?
It's another tough one. You're good at this. You should have been a reporter or something. I think that everybody in this church has something to offer. I mean, and I remember one time on a Wednesday night when Amy was talking about one of her trips to Mexico. And we were cleaning up after the service, and I said, I can't fix immigration policy, but I can stack up the chairs afterward. And I think each one of us has something to offer. And it seems, you know, it might seem small. I mean, last night I slept on a couch in the youth building. Then not that big a deal. Got up, made a pot of coffee, just like I do every morning at the house. But I do think there's an opportunity for everybody to find a place. And that's one of the neat things about Park Road for me was finding a place where it was easy to fit in. There was so much going on here and so many opportunities that when I came here, met Russ and Amy, met Dan, you find out about all these different avenues, and yeah, you can find a spot to fit in pretty easily here.
Let me give you the last word to make a pitch to your fellow church members here. Thinking about missions involvement at Park Road Baptist Church, where do we need help?
All over the place. We did, again, Room at the Inn last night. We'll do it again later this month and twice more in February and March. We are going to need to pack more snack bags from Reggie Davis in February. We've got all kind of opportunities. Dan's about to put an item in the newsletter that you can look out for. Loaves and Fishes is looking for drivers. We've got opportunities all over town, but it's not just that stuff. I mean, we've got groups, the needlers who make all the dresses that we take to Cuba for the little girls and different sewn items over the years. So all kind of ways to plug in here, and if there's something you can do, I'm pretty sure we can find a way to steer it.
I'm so grateful for Darin Gantt, for his individual gifts and for the way he's plugged into this body. I love the story that we have together, the way we've come together through the larger Baptist body, and for the work that he's done. And I hope he's inspired you this morning that maybe you're going to say yes to something new in the coming days. Darin, thank you. May it be so.